Hello and welcome to Everyone Dies, the radio show produced by Passionate World Talk Radio, whose goal is to educate, enlighten, and entertain. I'm Marianne Matzo, and for the next 30 minutes, I am your host. Today I'm going to be talking with Becky Jackson. And 5 years ago, actually when she was 72 years old, her son died from liver failure secondary to having taken drugs. And Becky's going to talk with us today about that experience and her therapy work and kind of how she has working on her healing and understanding the trauma that she's gone through. So, Becky, welcome to Everyone Dies.
Thank you so much for having me.
And so there's sort of like a lot of components in terms of your story with your son. Where would you like to start? Where's the best place to start in this story?
Gosh, I'm going to guess to start with a little background on something I call my interfamily concept or interfamily model, because that started when he was quite young, and when I was quite young, actually. 1976, I saw a movie, made-for-TV movie called Sybil, about a woman with 16 multiple personalities. And although I was not someone who had a multiple personality, I realized I was probably about 32 at the time, and I realized I had a variety of selves inside that I needed to talk to, not only about remorse and regrets, but about including them and their experiences in a more honoring, accepting way. So I kind of started down that path of meditating and visualizing and talking to a variety of younger ages of myself. And in my career, I have incorporated that particular model and the tools to use the model to tap into everyone's own personal inner family and help guide them toward that healing. The reason I would give that background is because when my son became ill, and we knew it was probably terminal, I think I went into a state of shock and kind of went to a very adult self that tried to support his wife, his children, my grandchildren, etc. But when I wasn't in the family environment and I would come home, I knew I needed to let a young mother part of me cry and cry and cry. And all of her dreams, all of her hopes for that incredible, bright, competent young boy that was just so delightful and so charming, that my adult self had seen the choices he had made, and so I wasn't surprised. I was heartbroken, but I wasn't surprised at the outcome. But the young mother needed her own time. And so I actually said to my husband, I'm going to move into a spare bedroom so that if I need to cry, I'm going to turn the light on and write and cry and meditate, because I don't want to bother you if I need to do that. So that began probably within the last 2 months that he was alive. I started really honoring that young mother part, that 35-year-old young mother who had so many tears. And so when do you want me to keep going and talking about the process of his death?
Well, I want, just one question that I have is, you talk about interfamily therapy work. So it's not interfamily in terms of different people within the family. It's interfamily in terms of the different ages of ourselves. Is that correct?
Correct. Right. Yes,
okay.
That is correct. What I do when I work with clients, I introduce them initially to future selves. And the way I stumbled onto that concept was somebody said to me when I was newly on my own recovery path, I want you to make a list of 3 to 5 women that you admire and respect. They can be men if you want, but you have to pick women that you would respect, admire, and trust. And in times of confusion, do not do what you would do. Pick one of them and do what they would do. And I noticed that when I put somebody else's name on it, I accessed a level of wisdom and insight that I didn't normally have. And so after doing that for a short time, I just decided to call, instead of giving other people's names, I decided it could be my future self. So at around, 32, 33, I just had all my future selves and, count on them. And now I've grown into being a lot of them. But
well, that's what I was going to ask you. So were you right about your future selves? I mean, do you think because you envisioned it, you became it, or did you kind of think you knew where you were going?
That's a really interesting question, and actually I've been asked that before when I do workshops for people. And my reply is usually, I have naturally curly hair, and I say, she seems to be a little more put together than I am with my naturally curly hair. So, but interestingly, and I don't know if this is off subject, but when I decided to meditate and welcome in, 10 years older, 5 years older, etc., when I got up to 85 years old, a short Italian woman came in, and she was all dressed in black. And I was kind of stunned. And then I realized that I grew up in an Italian section of town, and although I'm not very tall and very fair, a lot of my girlfriends had a widowed grandmother in their home that always wore black per Catholic tradition. And so I really like her, and she's very comforting. And although she's not necessarily a future Becky, we have kept her and welcomed her.
Is she a good cook?
So yes, the Interfamily is all of my younger selves and all of my future selves.
And so when you're working with a client and you're saying, envision what these future selves, somebody you admire, respect, and you trust, then how do you move backwards in terms of finding all those younger selves? Because don't people kind of, there's a certain age where you remember your life, but before that you really don't. So how do you deal with that?
There is a creativity within us that I find absolutely magical and inspirational. Because my history was to, I used diet pills, and as well as I was, a drinker. When my children were very, very young, I wasn't a very competent parent. And, I was aware I was not a competent, loving parent in the ways that I would have liked to be. And when I started on my Interfamily healing path, after a few months of meeting with a few chosen ages, a young 28-year-old mother showed up, and Becky, and she showed up with dried caked blood all over her shoulders and face, in slumped shoulders, kind of a shame posture that absolutely startled me. And I did not know what to say to her, but I knew she was showing me her level of self-loathing and self-hate for being unable to be the kind of parent she wanted to be. And instead of knowing what to say to her initially, again, this is in a visualization meditation state, I had a little 3-year-old Becky that I had always invited in, and this little 3-year-old Becky sweetly patted her cheek to knock off some of the dried cake blood when I couldn't figure out what to say. But after a moment or so, I said, that behavior is, we're not going to tell you that's acceptable, because it's not. But we know that self-loathing and self-hate isn't acceptable either, and we will find something valuable about you, and we do want you in our inner family. And that young mother has brought a humanity and a compassion and an acceptance and an understanding that I use in my work today. And yet that is the creativity that I was startled about in the very beginning of going on my Interfamily healing path.
And so how do you go about going on that that path? How does that journey begin?
Well, I think I have a book coming out that is the title is Seeking, Finding, Healing. And the subtitle is a complete guide to a self-directed interfamily healing. And I go through chapter by chapter, helping people understand how important it is to have actions and behaviors and beliefs that allow you to be a parent that can be trusted for all of your younger selves. If they've had any trauma, any rejection, any abandonment, you become the parent that they trust. So first, there's a lot of cognitive work that goes into it. I call it the foundation piece. Then we move into...
I'm sorry. Hi, we had a bit of a glitch there. So I'm sorry. Go ahead. Please continue.
So after the kind of cognitive work of becoming a woman, a man, a parent that you can respect, then we move into utilizing the tool of guided visualizations. And that's where the individual creativity comes out. So in the groups that I do, it's amazing that my words are the same as I do a guided visualization for people. Everyone's experience is different because everyone has different issues that are coming to the forefront and for an opportunity to be healed. So that's what I love about the process, is it's so personally creative.
Do you ever find that sometimes people lose control or get real uncomfortable in the situation of pulling up some of that old stuff?
Well, that is why I focus a lot on the foundation piece, so that, there are always creative surprises in there, but by having this solid foundation that also includes people articulating their spiritual truths, their spiritual beliefs, so that they feel supported. I oftentimes introduce people to the concept of guardian angels or spirit guides, so that and a higher power and a God concept, so that they're not really, it takes a village to raise a child. So we want to put that support team together internally before we even start down that path. And yes, sometimes it does, as the young mother who showed up with dried cake blood on her, was startling and yet so important for the overall healing.
And so when your son's Henry, correct?
Say it again?
Your son's name? Henry?
Jeffrey.
I'm sorry, I misheard that from you. I very much apologize. So when Jeffrey died, how did you activate this model to help you with that grief?
I actually got to be with him, as was his wife, his sister, and his daughter. His girls were surrounding him when he took his last breath. And I stayed maybe 2 minutes, and then I went, and that was in the bedroom. I went and sat on the couch. He was home in hospice. I went and sat on the couch with my husband, and I immediately felt his energy kind of zooming around with a very liberated, joyous feeling. Like, whew, I'm glad that, that body's not tying me down anymore, which, was a little startling. We were probably about a, 3-4 hour drive away, so we drove home. I didn't get home until, early in the morning. And after we went to bed and I slept, I got up and I thought, I want to talk to his soul, because that is something I've done before in my interfamily work, is to talk not just to the personality of another, but to the soul of another. And I went in to meditate and asked him, how are you? And he showed up, again, joyous and zooming around, and tell everybody I love him. And I was actually taken back. I was a little startled by that. And I paused and I said, do you have any sense of being a failure? And he stopped zooming around, and he stopped in front of me and smiled and said, was I a failure or was I a teacher? And he kept zooming around. And I felt, oh, my God, he was one of life's best teachers for me. He forced me
What do you think you learned? Yeah, what I was going to say. Well, what do you think you learned from Jeffrey? What do you mean by that?
I think I learned that it's not important to be so judgmental as we are with each other. That we can trust that everybody is on their own path, learning what their own soul needs to learn, and even the people that look like on our outside that they might be failing, in fact, are not. And that concept, really struck home with me.
Mm-hmm.
That I as a parent who had adolescents who I started to find drugs in the bedroom, I really can see that forced me to grow and to learn and to be accountable and to be accepting at a level that I probably hadn't been previously. So those are the kinds of things that I feel that I learned from him.
Mm-hmm.
One of the meditations I did, I'm going to say a month or so afterwards, maybe 3 or 4 months afterwards, is I realized that my young mother who needed to cry, now my young mother needed to be remorseful about mistakes she's aware she made. And so I decided to do a meditation to talk to his soul again and to let my young mother sit before him and express any remorse or any regrets that she had about her role as his parent.
Mm-hmm.
And when I went into the meditation, I saw him sitting in a meadow, kind of cross-legged, Indian style, sitting in the meadow. Mm-hmm. And I went in and sat down before him, and I told my young mother she could, say whatever she needed to say. And as she recounted some of her mistakes, with tears, he reached out with his right hand flat and placed it on my heart. And he said, "You were exactly the parent I needed in this lifetime." And so the comforting that I have received as I've gone along doing my interfamily or meditation work around his death, he has brought me tremendous comfort.
I've talked with, other people who've lost their children, to either drugs themselves or the effect of drugs, and even in my reading. And there's a lot of that guilt feeling, and, like you're talking about, and a lot of that, well, if I had done this, if I had done that, it would have come out better, or it would have come out differently. I could have saved him, or I could have done something. With using this interfamily work model, do you find that those harsh judgments and feelings still crop up, even though you felt Jeffrey say to you, you were the right mom and the one I needed?
I can tell you it doesn't crop up much, and most of the time, when it has, I kind of comfort that young mother, because she wanted, as most parents do, want to do everything right, and there is no parent that does everything right.
That's true.
And so just kind of comforting her and has helped as well. But my present-day self doesn't have that overriding remorse or guilt. It's mostly will pop up from the young mother. But even after that visualization, there's almost none of that, which is miraculous in my opinion.
Becky, I think so too, because even though, at least in my experience, even though we forgive ourselves, or even though we say, cognitively, in my head, I understand, I did my best, or that there was, all those kind of comforting things, there are still those, 2 a.m. times when you're missing your child, and you say to yourself, well, but maybe. But what am I hearing you correctly in saying that enabling yourself in your meditation to talk to all those age different aged Becky's has, I don't know, spared you those feelings, if that's the correct way of putting it, but
it hasn't spared me them, but it let me walk through them with a little more grace. I could be the woman of today and let that young mother be comforted by the me of today about her remorse and her regrets. And with that last visualization that I expressed, that meant a lot to her, to be able to sit down directly with him and with tears in her eyes, recount some of the regrets or remorse that she had. And I can tell you, after that one, it's really been okay with her. It's really been fine with her.
And so with the clients that you work with, do they get to this level of peace that you've been able to find for yourself?
Well, I'd say a lot of them do. I think it depends on how long they've been at it and the commitment that they have to the work. But the people that are committed to the work, it is a lifelong practice that brings incredible results. So people may work with me for a year or two, some in the beginning, but I have clients and friends who have used the model for over 30 years. And to this day, don't need to give me any, don't need me to facilitate any of it, but it is an absolute, incredibly valuable tool for their ongoing life path.
And, and I can see how much that makes sense, because we carry, all those aged people within ourselves, and kind of finding a way to make peace with each of them is a lot of work. And,
yes, it is. Yes, it is.
And
you know what? I'd rather do the work than not,
Well, it's certainly harder on ourselves if we don't do the work.
There you go.
Because you can be very stuck in kind of going around that same racetrack over and over and over again, and it's just a circle of kind of hell, unless you do something different and say, this isn't working for me. I need to manage my trauma, maybe, and my grief in a different way. Does that sound
absolutely
accurate?
Yeah.
So if people were, to purchase the book, Seeking, Finding, Healing, and, we'll have the link and all of that for that, with the interview, is it something that people can do on their own, or should they do it along with a therapist?
Well, one of the things that I have a chapter in the book is how to create a support team for yourself, because I think even though you have to do the inner work, meaning the meditation and the creativity and writing down what you saw and what you heard and how you felt, having a feedback loop for a supportive group of friends and or therapist is very, very helpful. So I don't think, I think for most of us, life is about doing it with a team around us. And so I think that the team, is a valuable component. But the point of the subtitle, which is, the complete guide to a self-directed, means you recruit your team. You get the people on board. And, back in 76, this was a little weird for most people. I had to really kind of seek out some people that weren't kind of freaked out by some of the concepts that I'm sharing with you, and that are, because there wasn't any interfamily healing therapy systems at that time. There was just me stumbling along on my own. So I do believe people can, but one of the components is to, recruit team members. And yes, people can call me, and yes, I have groups that they can join. And yes, I can work with people, helping them go through especially the cognitive part and the guided visualization. But the work is so individual that it still is the person kind of leading it. I'm just kind of an advisor, so to speak.
You're one of the angels, right?
There you go.
So any last thoughts or words of advice for the listeners who, have gone through the, terrible trauma of having a child die in terms of 5 years later? Anything that you would want to offer them as a final thought?
Well, I think the thing that I would say to wrap up is the loving memories I have are the most precious commodity. And the remorse and regrets that my younger mother had to come out and be talked through and healed. But the loving memories are what makes my heart happy, is all the great memories I have of him.
What a gift to have a child and to feel that peace, even though he died young.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, Becky, thank you so much for chatting with us, and I hope that our listeners will take the time, take a look at your book, give it some thought in terms, especially I would think if you're feeling stuck with whatever it is that you have been doing, to make a change in your approach to the loss and the grief.
Yeah.
And thank you to our listeners for spending time with me during our show, Everyone Dies. You can read our blogs and listen to our other podcasts at everyonedies.org. Thank you to our producer, Jeannie White, and to our CEO, Lillian Caldwell. We produce a new show every Wednesday to answer questions related to life-threatening illness, dying, and death. Remember, you can listen to Passionate World Talk Radio on Spreaker and our shows wherever you listen to podcasts. If you have a topic you'd like to discuss on our show, please email me, marianne@everyonedies.org. That's MarianneAT@EVERY1DIES.org. I hope that you live your best life every day. And remember, every day is a gift. Thank you for listening.